Okay, so I hope this man is going well. Again, it's a difficult matzav, but as I said, I don't want to repeat what I said the other day, but we have to be machshiv our Torah and our mitzvahs. It's a very, very important inyan. The truth is, we don't always believe what we know in our heads. We know, of course, Torah is a zechus. We say it and we know it intellectually, but emotionally we don't always have the hergish that, in point of fact, it makes a difference. And we got to tell ourselves that. We have to understand that. We have to know that this is not just nice words that we say. This is emes. This is the way Hashem created the world. Part of the implication of Histakel b'Yaraisu Borei Alma is that the Kiyum Ha'olam depends on Talmud Torah. This is a pasuk in Yirmiyahu, a very famous pasuk that I know you've read and seen. That says, "Imlo brisi yomim v'layla chukei shemayim v'aretz leisamti." If it wouldn't be for the bris of the Torah that you have to learn yomim v'layla, I would not have created the laws of heaven and earth. That means the kiyum ha'olam depends on Talmud Torah. So when we begin this man a few days early, and if you add up this yeshiva and all the yeshivas that did it, and all the talmidim that do it, you have, probably thousands and thousands of hours. I don't know, thousands of hours. And who knows what bracha that brings to the world. So, again, Rabbi Godwin mentioned to me that some Bachrim were a little not happy that the Ben Zmanim was cut short. And through that, I hear it. Because I'm even a little unhappy that Ben Zmanim was cut short. Because, you need rest, and it's a hechsher mitzvah, too, that the navel. But still, I hope everybody understands that the Tayelis is so, so great with the extra learning that you do for Klal Yisrael, that even though it's something that, is a little not as comfortable as we would like, not as easy as we would like, but that Mesiras Nefesh really makes a very, very big difference. And B'ezras Hashem, it should be a Yeshua for Klal Yisrael. But again, on a sad note, I had mentioned in passing that a friend of mine, a chaver of mine, his niece was a hostage. And I just heard now that unfortunately her body was found. So, her dead body was, So the Tzarenu, there's still many, many, many tragedies that have happened, that are happening, that probably will happen. So we're in a matzav where we need Rachamei Shemayim, and we really have to feel that we need to turn to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What was very amazing, somebody just sent me this, that Rav Moshe Sternbach, on Chol HaMoed Sukkos during Simchas Beis Shueva, before any of this happened. He started talking about, it was almost like Ruach HaKodesh, he started talking about how do you celebrate Simchas Torah if, God forbid, there's a slaughtering of Jewish people. Like, people didn't know, but why is he B'davka talking about that? But he had a premonition, apparently, that there would be something that would happen on Simchas Torah. Very, very amazing. Okay, so I thought what we do, again, I do want to go things in order, but I thought in light of the matzav, there's actually a chelik of the Eben Shelaima that might be very kedai to learn, and actually very interesting to learn as well. This is the last parak of Eben Shelaima, so I'd like to go through that parak. We won't finish it today, but we'll learn it for a few weeks. And this is parak Yud Aleph, the last parak of the Eben Shelaima. And it is about Mashiach and Geula and the Erev Rav. The Erev Rav. Now it's interesting, the Vilna Gaon makes a very big deal about the Erev Rav. In other words, it gets greatly expanded from its original character. In the Torah, Erev Rav has a very specific, limited meaning. It refers to the Egyptians who decided to leave Egypt along with Bnei Yisrael. That's what Erev Rav means. Erev Rav. Now, big machlokas, did the Erev Rav convert or did they not convert? If they converted, was it a sincere conversion, so they became Jewish, or was it a fake conversion? Right, questions. And then you have a shaila, how many was the Erev Rav? Right, we know there were 600,000 men from 20 up who left Mitzrayim, and the women and the ones lower than that we don't really know, but they usually give a figure of 3 million people. That's the usual hashara that people give. How many was the Erev Rav? So the truth is, in Chazal, there's some amazing numbers. Some say Erev Rav was equal to the Yotzei Mitzrayim, 3 million. Others say it was kiflayim, double, triple, quadruple. Some make the Erev Rav a huge, huge, huge number, even more than the Jews who left Mitzrayim. And already, Chazal had the tendency, the netiya, to kind of blame a lot of stuff on the Erev Rav, meaning a lot of the Averos of the Dor HaMidbar, Chazal kind of want to say, well, it was the Erev Rav that started it. It was the Egel and Korach and Meraglim, even though there were other regular Yidden involved, but the Erev Rav was the impetus. But be it as it may, the pashtus is that the Erev Rav kind of died in the desert, meaning along with the Dor HaMidbar that died in the Midbar, the Erev Rav died in the Midbar, and we normally don't assume that the Erev Rav made it to Eretz Yisrael. And therefore, we would assume that they don't have any long-term impact on the history of Am Yisrael because they were a desert phenomenon, and they were gone, and therefore that's kind of the end of them. Even with Chazal, that said it was a huge, huge number of people. Now we're going to see, maybe not even today because it's in the middle of the parak, but I'm just talking about the title of the parak here, that the Vilna Gaon, al pi Kabbalah, based on the Zohar, but the Vilna Gaon develops, that Erev Rav is not just a specific group of people, but it refers to a certain Kayach Hatuma that was mizdabek to Bnei Yisrael. In other words, we kind of caught a virus from them. And that virus, or that cancer, whatever term you want to use, remained within Klal Yisrael and is responsible for a lot of the Averos and a lot of the Machlokas and a lot of the Sinas Chinam that exists with Am Yisrael. So instead of looking at Erev Rav as kind of a specific group of Egyptians who left Egypt, it actually becomes a spiritual machala within Am Yisrael that we suffer from to this very, very, very day. So the Gra, again, based on the Zohar, he didn't stop make it up, but the Gra assigns the Erev Rav a huge, huge role in the spiritual struggles that Am Yisrael faces to this very day. Now, having said that, even with the Gra, I think we do misuse the term Erev Rav in modern Haredi society. Like, you see it thrown around like, if you're in favor of yeshiva students going into the army, you must be from the Erev Rav or whatever it is. I mean, yeah, there's plenty of machloks. People have debates over things. That doesn't mean, just like, you don't call somebody Amalek because they think there ought to be ninth grade math or whatever. So, you're not the Erev Rav because of something like that. So we do misuse the term in hyperbole, but it is based on the Gra, who looks at Erev Rav as a spiritual infirmity within Klal Yisrael. In fact, maybe it's Kedai, although this whole parak is about Mashiach and the like, but maybe it's Kedai to look at what he says about the Erev Rav. We'll look at that first. Let me just see 1 second here. If you haven't Shelaima, this is in Perek Yud Aleph, Seif Ches. And this is what the Gra says. The Gra says, Chamisha, again, the Evan Shelaima got it from other places where the Gra wrote it, right? Remember, just to remind you, the Evan Shelaima is not written by the Vilna Gaon. It's an anthology of teachings from the Vilna Gaon, not always in the exact lashon of the Gra, from Rav Shmuel Malzin, who was a Maggid in Vilna, and his son, Rav Yitzchak Malzin, who was also actually the son was more famous than the father, who was a great Paisek and the author of Shvisa Shabbos, but he also re-edited the Evan Shelaima and added a lot of teichen to the Evan Shelaima. And if you look, everything that we say from the Gra, it'll always tell you the Makor. Mishlei is the most common one, but all the other Svarim as well. So here is what it said in the name of the Gra. Chamisha mine Erev Rav yesh Yisrael. There are 5 categories of people within Klal Yisrael that are called Erev Rav, meaning spiritually somehow they're connected to that Egyptian Tuma that came into us. Aleph, the first one, is Balei Machlekes V'Lashon Hara. It counts as 1. People who foster Machlokes and Lashon Hara by degrading people, that is a negative kayach of the Erev Rav, and they're mashchis, Klal Yisrael. We'll come back to it. B, or a base, balei taiva. People who are simply hedonists, playboys or whatever it would be. They have to indulge in drugs and alcohol and promiscuous, immoral behavior. They just give into their taivas without gavul. Now, this doesn't mean every person who's occasionally nichshel in taiva is Erev Rav. Right? We're talking the word balei taiva is a different word. Just like a bal tshuva means a person who is really totally committed to doing tshuva. So a bal taiva is somebody totally committed to taiva. Right? So everybody's nichshel in taiva, but that doesn't make you a bal taiva. But a balei taiva is the second category of Erev Rav. Now Gimel is interesting, a new category. Hatzivuim she'ein teicham kibaram. So the word savua is really the word for a hypocrite. Savua, because like you're colored, meaning it's as if to say you're painted on the outside a different color than you are on the inside. It's not teicham kibaram. Your inside is not like the outside. You're a hypocrite. You come across, now usually a hypocrite would mean you come across as a bigger tzaddik than you really are. There aren't that many reverse hypocrites. In fact, that might be called humility. That might be called anava, if a person portrays himself as less of a tzaddik than he is. But okay. But the Gra is talking about a person who holds himself up as a very chashuv level. So he says that's also from the Erev Rav, the notion of hypocrisy, the notion of showing people that you're a righteous person when in fact you're not. Now, I think I'd mentioned, I'm not sure if I said that to this year or not, a vort that I read from two sources. One is one is the Alter of Slobodka, and the other is the Frierdiker Lubavitcher Rebbe. Actually, I saw it for Victor Miller. Rav Victor Miller said this vort, and he said it b'shem the Frierdiker Lubavitcher Rebbe and the Alter of Slobodka. Right? Rav Victor Miller said it, and he said that must be its emes, because if both the Hasidim say the same vort and the Misnagdim, so it got to be true, because everybody claims the vort. And that is, the story goes that somebody went to either the Alter or the Frierdiker Rebbe, that's Rav Yosef Yitzchak Schneerson. And they said, you think your Hasidim, your Talmidim are such great tzaddikim. They're actually hypocrites. They behave a lot firmer than they really are. So don't be so proud of them. So reputedly, both the Alter, either the Alter or the Rebbe or both, they said, I'm very happy if my Talmidim are pretending. Why? Because state in the Mishnah in Peah, the last Mishnah in Peah, right, talks about matanos li'aniyim, the different things you have to give to aniyim. So it talks about the great avera of a person who pretends to be an ani when he's not an ani. So what does it say? It says, he who is noitel matanos li'aniyim, claiming he's an ani when he's not an ani, Hashem is going to be geyser, he's going to become what he's pretending to be. You pretend to be poor, the Eibusher is going to make you poor. So, says the Alter Slobodka or the Frierdiker Rebbe, since Hashem's Midah Taiva is much more generous than the Midah Perennius, if Hashem is going to make you become what you pretend to be when it's bad, Kal v'chomer, when you pretend to be good, he's going to make you good. So Meli said, I want my Talmidim to be hypocrites. Let them make believe they're tzaddikim. They make believe enough, they're going to become. Now, it's not just a word. The truth is, al derech hamusar, it's that way as well. I mean, you have to understand what hypocrisy means. What is the Gra talking about? I mean, a lot of times, we do things, we try to do things that on some level are maybe beyond our madrega a little bit. We come to whatever it is, we want to daven vasikim, we want to do learning, we want to do something, and we say, well, it's not really my madrega. But the answer is you do it and you're mishtadel and you grow into it, right? So there is a concept that if you try to grow into something, you grow into it. Now there has to be a gavul. The Gra talks about this in Mishlei. You can't take on too much at any given time. It's like weightlifting, right? If you can lift 30 pounds, you can't go from 30 pounds to 300 pounds in one day, or you'll break your back. So you go 30 to 35, or 35 to 40. Same thing in Avodas Hashem. If you just keep on lifting the same 30 pounds, you'll never get stronger. You got to do more. But you got to do more that's also not too much. So that's a chachma. That's not a pashut thing to know exactly. You got to challenge yourself to go beyond what you're doing, but do it in increments that you're able to handle. In Avodas Hashem, it's exactly the same. A certain amount of hypocrisy just means I'm challenging myself. But again, it all depends on your motive. If the pshat is you're doing it because I want to become a better Eved Hashem, and I want to go beyond my comfort level, that's good. That's not what the Gra is talking about. When the Gra condemns hypocrites, he's not talking about somebody who is trying to become a better Eved Hashem. He's talking about somebody who's trying to fool people, meaning, if I'm behaving from, I'm not doing it because I want to become a more religious person. I'm doing it because I want you to think I'm a more religious person. That's a totally different cheshbon, right? So there is what you might call good hypocrisy and bad hypocrisy. Good hypocrisy is when you're trying to go beyond your comfort level, to go a little bit beyond where you are, and you're doing it with the intention of I want to grow in my avodas Hashem. And even though I'm not really there yet, but I want to challenge myself so I can become better. So is that hypocrisy? Well, maybe in the English language you might call that hypocrisy, but that's a derech of avodah. That's a way of growing. But if the pshat is, I really don't care about this at all, but I want you to think I'm a tzaddik, that's a different picture. That, the Vilna Gaon says, is already the maisa of the Erev Rav. Right? The Erev Rav come across as tzaddikim, when in fact they want to be machshel, right? So far we have three categories. One is balei machlokes, including balei lashon hara. The second are balei taiva. The third are tzevuim, hypocrites. She'ein teicham kebarim. By the way, on this lashon of teicham kebarim, this lashon, of course, is a lashon of Chazal. Teicham, your inside, is not kebarim, like your outside. So if you remember, it's a fascinating Gemara in Maseches Brachos, the fourth parak. This was the famous palace revolt, where Rabbi Gamliel was the Nasi of the Sanhedrin, and he was Chaylik and Rabbi Yoshua a number of times, and at some point he actually told Rabbi Yoshua to stand up in the corner, like he told him, stand up. And as a result, the Chachamim of the yeshiva, Talmidim, they thought this was such a bizayon that they deposed Rabbi Gamliel. They actually, I guess you'd call it, they impeached him. They removed him from office. I don't really know what the mechanism for that is. In other words, but from the Gemara, there is such a concept of impeaching a Rosh Yeshiva, or a Nasi even, of a Sanhedrin. Could you impeach a Melech? That I don't know. We had a revolt, or Rechavam was the Teres HaShvatim, but okay. So if you recall, Rabbi Gamliel was deposed, and then they couldn't decide who would be the next Nasi. They didn't want to make Rabbi Yoshua the Nasi because that would be too much of an insult to Rabbi Gamliel, that his Bar Palukta would be elevated. They wanted to make Rabbi Akiva the Nasi, who was the great Gadol, but Rabbi Akiva didn't have Zechus Avos because since he came from Gerim, he didn't have the special Zechus of a Yichus. So they finally decided on what you call a dark horse in politics, an unknown candidate, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. Okay. I thought Sukkot was over. Okay. Anyway, so the thing is that Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah was only 18, but he was a great chacham, and he was a Dor Asiri Me'ezra. So he both had wealth. See, it was necessary. And Nasi had to have wealth also because he would negotiate with the Romans. There was a certain amount of gashmius that needed to be there as well, because he was also the political negotiator for Klal Yisrael. So he was wealthy. He had Zechus Avos. He was a great Talmid Chacham. But the problem was he was only 18 years old. Who's going to respect him? So his beard turned gray, and that's the meaning. Harei ani keven. I am like a person who is 70. His beard turned gray or turned white, so people should be mechabed him. And then eventually the Gemara comes out that there was a compromised position where he alternated with Rabban Gamliel. But Gamliel had some weeks and he had the other weeks, etc. By the way, the Arizal says, an interesting word, he says in Shara Gilgulim that Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah was a Gilgul of Shmuel Hanavi. Shmuel Hanavi was nifter at the age of 52. So Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah was born with the neshama of someone who had been on earth 52 years. So when he was 18 years old, his neshama had been on earth 70 years. Harei ani keven shivim shana, zayzak, the Arizal. But the reason I'm bringing this up is there was a fascinating discussion there that the day that Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah became Nasi, they added 400 safsalim, 400 benches to the Beis HaMedrash. Now, I don't know how many people sat on a bench, but they had an enormous increase in Talmidim. Enrollment became explosive. Why? Because Rabban Gamliel had a policy that nobody could go into the Beis Medrash unless tocham kibaram. They were as good on the inside as they were on the outside. A lot of people couldn't pass the test. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah had what you call an open admissions policy. Anybody who wants to come and learn, come and learn. 400 safsalim were added to the Beis HaMedrash. So the Gemara says like this. This is mamish interesting. The Gemara says, Rabban Gamliel had chalisha sadas. He sees how many people, he didn't realize how many people he was turning away. He sees hundreds and hundreds of people coming and learning Torah. He felt that maybe I was wrong. Maybe my policy of Tocho Kabara was a mistake. So the Gemara says, Is chazile bechilna. He had a chalaim of beautiful white earthenware flower pots, clay, shining earthenware flower pots. Looked so beautiful and clean on the outside that were filled with dirt. So Hashem was showing him, listen, all of these Talmidim, they're filled with dirt. But then the Gemara says, V'lohi, that wasn't Demis. Hashem showed him so he shouldn't feel so bad. Aliba Diemis, he should have let people in. He should have let people in. So it's a whole interesting educational debate. Let's say you're going to start your own yeshiva someday, right? Whatever it is. Okay? What's my policy? What's my policy? Is my policy that I open my yeshiva to anybody who wants to learn, even if the person seems makolkol or seems crazy or doesn't seem quite with it or doesn't even seem that from. I'm not talking about a kiruv yeshiva, but I'm talking about, say, yeshiva. But who knows? The light of Torah brings him the mutav. Open admissions. You never know. Or is it the pshat that you should confine yourself to people who are sincere, who are ehrlich, who are serious? And if that means you have a smaller yeshiva, you have. So this was a machlokas. Rabban Gamliel took the position that it's better to have a higher quality of Talmud, even if numerically you're going to have much less, than to have huge numbers, which overall they're not going to be of such a high quality. And yet the mashmos of the Gemara is that Rabban Gamliel's chashbon was not correct. I mean, that's what the Gemara says. The Gemara says, yeah, Hashem gave him a dream so he shouldn't feel so bad. But Ali b'diyemes. Right? So this is, to this very day, this is a serious issue. Anyone who starts a yeshiva has to think about this. Should I try to make my admission as open as possible? Or am I looking for mitsuyanim? Am I looking right? Now, the Chazon Ish was pretty much in favor, actually, but the mashmas of the Gemara, of kind of open admissions. The Chazon Ish basically took the position that we know from experience, you can never tell what a person will become. You can never tell. This wild guy or whatever it is, you can never tell. And therefore you might be depriving Klal Yisrael of a Gadol Hador by simply saying, you're not for us. So the Chazon Ish was pretty much in favor of what we would call open admission policies. But there were other Rosh Yeshivas who felt they wanted to deal with Mitziyanim, they wanted to deal with Masmidim, and the like. So it's fascinating. I'm just bringing this in because the lashon of Teichem Kibarim was the crux of the machlekes Rabbi Gamliel and Rabbi Yoshua about the policy of the Safsalim in the Beis HaMedrash. Okay, so those are the first three. Now we have the fourth category. Remember, this is 5 groupings that fall within the Erev Rav. The fourth grouping is Hareitfim Achar HaKavod, Lasas Lahem Shem. People who are looking for kavod because they want to have a good name. Now, it's hard to understand. In some ways, I think this will often overlap with hypocrisy, because why do I want people to think that I'm a greater tzaddik and the like? A lot of times it'll be kavod, but there may be other reasons. But this is a separate thing, even if the guy is not a hypocrite. But the guy wants kavod. The guy wants the kavod all the time. What the Alter Slobodki used to say, that he was once at a meeting of Rabbanim, meeting of Gedolim. So somebody got up, an older Rosh Hashiva got up and said, I am a Zakein, I'm very old already, and therefore kavod is no longer an issue with me. I'm too old to care about kavod. So the Alter stopped him before he even said what he was going to say. And he says, there's no such thing as being too old for kavod. You could be, 110 years old. He says, if you don't get the right kavod. And he talked about how kavod can destroy everything. If you don't get the right kina on Tisha B'Av, all of a sudden you forget about the Beis HaMikdash. They didn't honor me with, this kina. Or maftir yaina. Right? What do they say? The story, maftir yaina is a kavod. To honor somebody with maftir yaina. So they tell the story about a person who was davening on Yom Kippur, and he was crying and he was sobbing, and he had so much kavana, and especially by Nisana Taikef, at the end of Nisana Taikef, before Kedusha, we say, Adam Yesaidai Me'afar, man's foundation is the dust, and the end of his life he'll go to the dust. He is like a chalaim, he is like a dream, he is like a piece of dust, he is like a feather. All of the things, how transient, how temporary we are, how insignificant we are, right? That's Nisana Taikef, right? And the person was crying and sobbing, Chaloim Yahof, Anan Pareach, like a cloud. So the Rav never realized what a tzaddik this person was, but the Rav couldn't help but notice. He said, I just didn't realize what tzidkus. So then it turned out that somebody got maftir yaina, and for some reason this guy expected to get it. So he starts yelling, he says, you give maftir yaina to him. He says, I'm a chashuv person here, right? You don't give maftir yaina to me. He starts fighting in the middle of Yom Kippur. So the Rav goes over to him quietly and says, I understand you're upset, okay, but it's Yom Kippur, and I just can't help. I remember, 2 hours ago during Musaf, Adam Yesaidei Me'afar, you were crying and sobbing over how humble you are, and so now kavod bothers you. I mean, you're. He says, listen. He says, when I'm talking to God, compared to God, I'm nothing. Compared to Him. He says, I'm a lot better than him. So he said, to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I'm Chaloim Yahof, Anan Pareach. He says, but not to him. So the Alter Slobodka said, not about this Maisa, but I'm disconnecting it. The Alter said that this is the derech of kavod. It poisons everything. Yom Kippur, Tisha B'Av, you could be in anything. And this idea of kavod comes to the fore, right? And the Gra says that is a poison. Now, he doesn't explain exactly how we caught it. See, this is the part I don't understand. In other words, obviously the Gra is saying that the Erev Rav infected us. And those infections will emerge in various ways. But if you ask me, what exactly was the mode of transmission? In other words, is the Gra saying, or the Zohar, that somehow people with these pegumim are actually descended from the Erev Rav? See, I'm not sure if that's true. I'm not sure if anybody is descended from the Erev Rav, because I think the Erev Rav died in the Midbar. In other words, that's a certain ambiguity here. This idea that in Klal Yisrael there are 5 groupings that are connected to the Erev Rav. I mean, one way of learning, I'm just thinking this out loud. One way of learning is, that somehow the descendants of the Erev Rav got nisarev in Klal Yisrael. And these descendants have these different midos. But that presupposes that there were survivors of the Erev Rav. The other way of learning is the actual original Erev Rav all died in the desert and nobody came into Eretz Yisrael. But the Gra is referring to spiritual contagion, that somehow in our 40-year hischabros to the Erev Rav, certain poisonous midas got caught. And that might be so. But then the question becomes, what's the mechanism? Does it just mean proximity, like oil Russia, oil Shechina, or is there some Kabbalistic transfusion that took place? So I'm going to leave this as a bit of an unanswered question, meaning to say, is the pshat that people with these midos are descended from the Erev Rav, or is it the pshat that it was simply something we caught from the Erev Rav through our chibur with them in the 40 years? But this is the fourth group, so again,
according to the second side, that maybe it was because of the chibur for 40 years, it sounds like maybe, at least according to the hypocrite point of the Tocha Tabaro, that maybe that would be a tzad against the mahalach of like welcoming everybody, because maybe you would want to be very clear of avoiding.
Because you want to separate the Erev Rav. You don't want the Erev Rav to come in. Yeah, I hear. Because that's a pretty strong statement. If the tzevuim are not stam misguided people, but they have the sheirish of the Erev Rav, so in a sense you don't want to reintroduce the poison, which could then spread, if you assume that that's exactly how it happened the first time around in the Midbar itself. So again, Balei Machlokes Lashon Hara, that counts as one. Balei Taiva, number 2. Hypocrites, Tzevuim, number 3. Number 4, Reitvim Achar HaKavait, number 4. Number 5 is Reitvim Achar HaMammon, which is, again, it's a type of taiva, but it's a little different. In other words, it's not a physical taiva like arayos or drinking or the like, or drugs, alcohol, but it's a taiva for acquisition. So that also blibes taiva. If you remember, just to go all the way back to Perek Beis, the Gra differentiates between taiva and chemda. Here he doesn't go with that difference, but basically he subdivided taiva. He says taiva is for the physical pleasures, and chemda is for mammon and acquisition. So here, he's not using that vocabulary, whatever, the Gra doesn't always use the same lashonos, but he is dividing them into taiva, balei taiva, and balei mammon, which does correspond to the chemda, taiva chemda distinction that he brought before. Now, of these 5 categories that are connected to the Erev Rav, we actually have a designation of which is the worst part of the Erev Rav that you got to get away from. Balei Machlokes Geruim Mikulam. Okay, so Balei Taiva, hypocrites, kavod, mammon, bad stuff. But Balei Machlokes is the worst of all, the most destructive of all. And he says, Vehem Nikram Amalekim. So here, again, this is all based on the Zohar, so it's hard to figure everything out. But we're switching designations. In other words, Erev Rav and Amalek are not the same. I mean, just in the Chumash, Erev Rav and Amalek are not the same thing, right? Erev Rav are the Egyptians that left Mitzrayim with us. That's what the Chumash says. And Amalek is a nation that attacked us when we left Mitzrayim. Amalek did not leave Mitzrayim with us. Amalek attacked us. And Amalek actually comes from Esav, right? Remember the Yichus. Esav had a son, Eliphaz. And Eliphaz had a Pilegesh, not a wife. He had wives also. But Timnah was the Pilegesh of Eliphaz. Not even a regular wife, a mistress, a concubine. And from the relationship of Eliphaz and Timnah came Amalek. Amalek is the child of Eliphaz and Timnah, and Amalek began the nation that represents the hatred and evil that Amalek represents. So here, just as an aside, I have to say the word of Rav Chaim Shmulevitz. Tremendous. Again, he was a gadol, but he was also a very experienced Rosh Yeshiva. He was a Rosh Yeshiva for many, many years, both in Europe and in Shanghai during World War II, and then, of course, in Eretz Yisrael. And Rav Chaim Shmulevitz had a shita that he would almost never kick anybody out. It's also connected to Tocha Gebara in some ways. He would almost never kick out a bacher from yeshiva. Not only didn't he, well, let me put it this way. Even if the Tocho and Borough were both bad, meaning it wasn't only he let you in if you were good on the outside and bad on the inside. He let you stay if you were bad on the outside and the inside. It's Taka Tocho Gebara, right? Everything's bad. But he would still let you stay. He would not kick you out. And the only exception would be if you were actively a negative influence on other people. That's always a cheshbon. If you're a mesis mediach, if you're trying to be mashpia on people, not to keep Shabbos or not to learn or whatever it is, that's a separate thing because you can't endanger other people. But if the pshat is he was doing his own thing, and even if he wasn't keeping all the sidrei yeshiva, Rav Chaim was very reluctant to kick anybody out, ask somebody to leave. So someone asked why, why are you having this guy hang around? So he said he doesn't want to create other Amaleks in the world. What's the pshat? So state in the Medrash like this. State in the Medrash that Timnah was actually the daughter of Amalek, Bas Paro. She was a Bas Paro. And she had a strong desire to be misdabek in Zera Avraham. She saw this was a holy family, a family of Kedusha. She wanted to join this family. And for whatever reason, the good side of the family, the Yitzchak and the Yaakov part of the family, rejected her. They thought she was not Ru'uya. So she said, if I can't be misdabek in the side of Kedusha, I will be misdabek in the other side, the side of Tumah. At least I have a shaykhus to Avraham. And if I can't have the dignity of a wife, the self-respect of a wife, I will even be misdabek as a pilekish. See the double rejection here. She was rejected from the side of Avraham, and even within the side of Esav, she was not regarded as important enough to be married. Esav had more than one wife, or Eliphaz had more than one wife, but she was a pilekish. Pilekish is an inferior status. But her yearning to be misdabek to Avram Avinu's mishpacha overrid all of that hurt. So why did Amalek become Amalek? So says Rav Chaim, this is what happened when you reject somebody. Or in this case, rejecting his mother. You reject somebody. That creates such an anger, such a resentment, that chas v'shalom, it can turn into Amalek. So Rav Chaim Shmulevitz said, I don't ask Bachrim to leave because I don't want to create Amaleks in the world. And Amaleks are created by rejection. It's a very interesting idea. Now, obviously Rav Chaim doesn't mean to blame the victim. But the truth is, again, I'm going to get myself in crazy places here. You talk about Hitler, right? Hitler is the closest that we could imagine to Amalek. In fact, it's an interesting issue. People talk about Hamas as Amalek. Now, obviously, Hamas are Rishoyim beyond comprehension. But I'm not sure, b'diuk, if Amalek is the right paradigm for Hamas. I'll tell you why. If you look in Rashi, again, based on Chazal, the aside of Amalek is a hatred that is not based on any ulterior objective. So, for example, we were attacked in the Midbar, we didn't have land, etc. If somebody attacks me because they want to steal my house, they want to steal my car, they want to steal my wife, that's rishus, but it's not Amalek. Amalek is when they hate me and they get nothing out of the hatred. It's just pure hatred. So Nazi Germany, whether Hitler was related to Amalek, that's another shaila, but certainly the spiritual koyach of Amalek is very much there. Because getting rid of the Jews was no taiva for Germany. I mean, the scientists, the philosophers, the musicians, the authors, they all were Jewish. I mean, they lost Albert Einstein, who managed to escape. They basically destroyed their society through the Holocaust. Of course, they destroyed the whole country anyway, but that way it was. So this is Amalek. Amalek is the only hatred, the only reason I hate is because I hate. I hate Kedusha, I hate Torah, I hate Ruchnius, I hate God. There's no profit in it for me, but I hate it. Hamas, on the other hand, has political objectives. Now, I don't mean to soften Hamas. Again, these are, of course, they are Rishon. Well, maybe I'm being pedantic. Maybe it's not such an important point. But I wouldn't use the lashon of Amalek for someone who has a political goal to kind of drive Jews out of this country and take it over. Evil, vicious. Yeah, obviously it's vicious. I mean, the more you hear about what was done, the more it just turns the stomach and what it was, Babel. But there's plenty of evil in the world that's not Amalek. Mitzrayim was not Amalek. Mitzrayim enslaving us is not Amalek. Because, hey, they used us as slaves. You see? With Hitler, it was the other way around. Jews were made to do useless work. In fact, they have the stories in concentration camps of Jews who would dig holes and then fill up holes. In other words, it wasn't the pshat that the Nazis used Jews for anything. It was just to be mavaza them. That's Amalek. But Paro, got stuff from us. So that's not Amalek. All right. So be it as it may. So now, the Gemara says something here, though, that I'm not sure how you're going to figure it out. The Gemara says there are 5 types of Erev Rav, and the first type of Erev Rav is Balei Machlokas. And then the Gemara says, and that's the worst of the 5. And then he says, oh, and by the way, they're called Amalekim. So how do you do that? How can you be Erev Rav and Amalek? Erev Rav is not Amalek, right? Amalek was in the Midbar, and Erev Rav left Mitzrayim. So what the Gemara is suggesting is what the Gemara is actually suggesting is that Chazal borrow and interchange terms to reflect spiritual Misuse, even though it's not biological Misuse. Meaning to say that, yes, we caught the virus of Machlokes from the Erev Rav. But it happens to be that the spiritual pagam of Machlokes is also the shayrish of Amalek. Amalek creates Machlokes between Hashem and Bnei Yisrael, and Machlokes within Bnei Yisrael. So you understand this word. So this is a little point that's very important in the lashon of Chazal, that when Chazal say this is Amalek, they don't mean to say, oh, this is a descendant of Amalek, but it means the same pagam that we got from the Erev Rav is the pagam of Amalek, which is a pagam of sinas chinam. Now, where do you see this pedafka? So it's very, very interesting. I don't know if the Gemara says it elsewhere, but I think Ravani Snapeshitz for sure talks about it. The Gemara says in Bava Basra that the Zera Amalek can only be defeated by the children of Rachel, and they cannot be defeated by the children of Leah. Amalek will be defeated by Zera Rachel, and not Zera Leah. Now, let's look at how this plays out. The first time Amalek attacked us in the Midbar, Moshe Rabbeinu made Hoshea bin Nun, it was not even Yehoshua yet, to be the general. Hoshea bin Nun, later to be known as Yehoshua bin Nun, was what Shevet was he from? Shevet Ephraim. Ephraim is the son of Yosef. Yosef is the son of Rachel. Why did Moshe Rabbeinu make Hoshea ben Nun the general against Amalek? Because Amalek is only defeated by Zerah Rachel. The next time we encounter Amalek is in the time of Shmuel Hanavi, when Hashem gives Shmuel a commandment to tell Shaul to eradicate Amalek. Shaul was supposed to eradicate Amalek. Shaul did 99% of the job, but he spared Agag. And because of that little bit of time till Shmuel killed Agag, Agag impregnated a woman, and that woman was the ancestor of Haman. Now, the Rishonim ask a kasha, if Yaakov Avinu said that Malchus of Yisrael should belong to Shevet Yehuda, Lo Yasser Shevet Mi Yehuda, and that's why David HaMelech is Shevet Yehuda, etc., then why was the very first king of Klal Yisrael, Shaul HaMelech, from Shevet Binyamin? The Rishonim asked the kasha, why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu create a Malchus of Shaul? Shouldn't Malchus have been Shevet Yehuda? So the Rambam's own answer is that since when they asked for a king, they asked with improper motivation, so Hashem didn't want to give them a permanent king. Hashem gave them a temporary king because the bakasha was not for a proper motive. But some want to say that before you can have Malchus based of it, you have to eradicate Amalek. Amalek can only be defeated by Zerah Rachel, not Zerah Leah. Therefore, we needed Shaul from Shevet Binyamin to eradicate. Now, why in the Midbar it was from Yosef and by Shaul is from Binyamin, that I don't know, but the common denominator is it has to be Zerah Rachel. Now, we then go to the story of Purim. Haman Ha'agagi. Haman is from Agag. Agag was the king of Amalek that Shaul failed to kill. And we know that Mordechai and Esther are descended from Shaul. So what's the pshat? So Mordechai and Esther engineering the Taliyah of Haman is rectifying the chisaron of Shaul not killing Agag. They were given a second chance. And once again, it had to be from Shevet Binyamin. And finally, we have this enigmatic figure that the Gemara only has one line about, that before there's Mashiach ben David, there is Mashiach ben Yosef, who's supposed to get killed. And what exactly is the tachlis of Mashiach ben Yosef? Lahachris Zarai shel Amalek, because Amalek is defeated only by Zerah Rachel and not Zerah Leah. So I think we have 4 examples where Amalek's downfall is connected to Rachel's children. We have Yoshua ben Nun in the war in the Midbar. We have the tzivoy of Shaul HaMelech to kill Amalek. We have the story of Mordechai, Esther, and Haman. And we have Mashiach ben Yosef as the precursor to Mashiach ben David. Yeah.
What's the shot that it has to be from the Rachel? Does it have to do with the fact that Leah was rejected and Rachel was...
Right, so I'm going to talk about that right now. So now, that's the fact. That is the fact. The fact is, the downfall of Amalek is connected to Zerah Rachel. Question is why? What gives Zerah Rachel a shlita over Amalek that Zerah Leah or the Shvachis, Bilhah and Zilpah, cannot have? So one of the answers is that Amalek represents, as the Gra says, machlokes, and machlokes is connected to sinas chinam. Although he doesn't mention that here, but you can understand that lashon hara machlokes has a strong correlation to sinah. because I make machlokas when there's sinna, lashon hara when there's sinna. So in effect, we can incorporate in this Erev Rav negativity of machlokas and lashon hara sinas chinam. So Amalek represents the paradigm of sinas chinam, hatred, hatred, hatred. So all of the brothers, Zerah Leah, who sold Yosef into Avdas, they have the pagam of sinas chinam. And Zamida keneged mida, because of the sinas chinam that they showed their brother Yosef, they become vulnerable to the sinas chinam of Amalek. But the Bnei Rachel, both Yosef, who was the victim, and Binyamin, who was not involved, they did not have the taint of sinas chinam. And for Keret, Yosef even forgave his brothers. So because they don't have the pagam of sinas chinam, they can be victorious over the kayach of sinas chinam. Now, the other explanation is what you said, that it goes back to Rachel and her sister Leah. Rachel and her sister Leah. Remember that Lavan switched, right? Lavan wanted Leah to be married first before Rachel. So he switched, and everything was dark. Yaakov wouldn't have noticed. And Rachel understood that this would happen, so Yaakov and Rachel had made up special identification simanim, and Rachel gave the simanim to her sister, so she shouldn't be mavuyash. Rachel gave up the opportunity to be the first one with Yaakov Avinu, which would be a great, great, great zechus, in order that her sister should not be ashamed. By the way, people ask the kasha. It is a good kasha. Hey, isn't this the proverbial example of a tzaddik on somebody else's cheshbon? I mean, it's one thing if Rachel just gave up some opportunity. But here, she's tricking her husband into marrying the person he doesn't want to marry. Meaning, what gives her the right to do this on Yaakov? I mean, we say, what a tzadekes Rachel is. Well, is that how Yaakov viewed it? What was Yaakov's feeling? So the emesis, it's a good kasha, really. How can you be a tzaddik in such an hyphen where you're mamish deceiving your husband and you're hurting your husband, or the one that would have been your husband had it gone through? The answer has to be that she knew for sure that had this been a shaila of Yaakov, meaning what would be if marrying my older sister, what would be if I were to tell you this and there would be a busha, what would you want me to... In other words, she knew that Yaakov would have been maskim. It's an amazing thing. That Yaakov would have been mavatir, and whatever his preferences were, not to be malbin somebody in a public way. She knew. And because she knew, she was able to do it, and we don't find that Yaakov was angry at her. It's interesting. We find Yaakov was upset at Lavan for the trick. We don't find anywhere that Yaakov had time on Rachel. It says, given the situation, Rachel did the right thing, and Yaakov appreciated that Rachel did the right thing. But there you also see that Rachel had plenty of reason to hate her sister. She had plenty of reason to hate her sister. And yet she was miskaberet over that hatred. And Memela, that gave the Zerah Rachel an immunity from the sinas chinam of Amalek. So it is connected. That Amalek has to be defeated by Zerah Rachel, who are immune from sinas chinam, both because of their lack of involvement in Mechilas Yosef, and because of Rachel being mevateres on her simanim, and that gives them a certain kayach against Amalek. Yeah.
And it just repeat this peshat that she was able to do it on Yaakov's husband because she knew Yaakov would want it. Yaakov is the one who suspected Lavan would try to do this trick and made this simanim with her in the first place. How could she say he didn't know? He didn't know, and if he would have known, he would have been masking.
Right. Yeah, you're right. I don't have the whole detail workout. In other words, it could be along the lines. I don't really know that. Ideally, Yaakov wanted to know that he was with Rachel. But apparently, once things went a certain way, Yaakov would have a hakara that this would be very, very humiliating. Like, what's going to happen? I mean, let's imagine this situation where the wrong woman is in the room and she doesn't have the simanim. Now, let's imagine what would have happened if Rachel wouldn't have given the simanim. So Yaakov is together with Leah. Again, it's dark. He doesn't know who he's with. She doesn't have the simanim. So what's going to happen then? I don't know what's going to happen then. Like in the middle of the night, like she's going to get just kicked out of the tent. Is there going to be an announcement? Is there going to be an asifa in which something is going to be announced? In other words, it could very well be that Yaakov, in principle, wanted to be sure, but then she understood as the busha would unfold. She understood that Yaakov himself would have been nischarit over this. So you're correct. So I'm adding a little bit that she knows that Yaakov would have changed his mind had he understood the full madrega of the busha. Now the last line of the paragraph here is Ein ben David ba ad sheyichlu min ha'olam. Now this is a pretty strong statement. Mashiach ben David cannot come until they. Now it's an interesting question of they are gone from the world. Now, who is the they? You can learn two ways. You could learn that they is going on the last line, the people that are called Amalek, Balei Machlokas, Lashon Hara, Sinas Chinam. And that goes back to the idea that Amalek has to be wiped out before Mashiach can come. Or you could learn that it's going on all 5 categories of the Erev Rav. In other words, is it only going on the last sentence? Or is it going on all 5? And what does that even mean? That means what? Mashiach cannot come until we eliminate Balei Machlekes, Balei Taiva. That doesn't leave that many people left. Tzevuim, right for Machar Kavod, right for Machar Mammon. Eliminate it. Eliminate it how? Well, the best way would be tshuva, obviously. Tshuva, that way you've eliminated them, but they'll be zeicha. Or does it mean, God forbid, death, destruction? What exactly, right? We'll have to see. We'll go into it a little bit more. What is this ad sheyichlu min ha'olam? Which means, to put it another way, the presence of these groupings are ma'akev the geula. Because if Ben David cannot come ad sheyichlu min ha'olam, then as long as they're here, even one, amen, right? The geula cannot come. Now then there's one more sentence, which is interesting. V'chol machlekes shelo l'shem shamayim hu mei Erev Rav hakoftzim lahoros v'lito l'Torah kamo shekasav v'nasa lanu Shem, which is by the Dor HaFlaga. Any machlokes in Klal Yisrael where the motivation is not l'shem shamayim, that comes from the Erev Rav, but from 2 directions. It's both Balei Machlokes and it's Redifa Achar Kavod. That's why he connects it to. He says, it's the Erev Rav who want to get the Atara. They want to get the crown of Kavod. Which means he's actually combining Machlokes with Redifa Achar Kavod. And this is a Machlokes if it's not L'Shem Shemayim. And he gives an early example, which is a pre-Erev Rav example of the Dor HaFlaga. Nasa lanu Shem. Let's build a tower so we will have a name of importance people. This idea of machlekes not l'shem shemayim. What does Pirkei Avos say? Every machlekes that's l'shem shemayim. Seifei lehiskayen. It will endure. We will continue to learn it. Right? Machlekes Hillel v'Shammai. We don't only learn Beis Hillel, we also learn Beis Shammai. Machlekes l'shem shemayim. Machlekes not l'shem shemayim. Kairach v'yadasai. That becomes batal u'mavutal. So that's the simple pshat, meaning a machlekes l'shem shemayim, then both sides of the machlekes have a chashivas, and we continue to learn from them. In fact, the Gemara even says that Beis Shammai it's interesting. Why is Beis Shammai always mentioned before Beis Hillel? So we tend to think, we're habituated, first say the thing we don't follow and then give us the bottom line. And that's how we, I think, instinctively understand it. The Gemara says the other way around. The Gemara says this was a kavod that Rebbe, Yehuda Hanassi, who was from Beis Hillel, gave to the Bar Paluktas that they would mention Beis Shammai first. It's not like, oh, they're the ones we don't follow, so just get them out of the way. It says it was a kavod that they're masker them first. Right? Sefer Liskayim. And of course, people also often ask the kasha. I mean, it's not a kasha, but it's a Harav. A lot of the sugya is havaminas that are nidche. So the pshat is, can I be yaitse Talmud Torah with svaras that are slugged up? It's slugged up. It's not emes. So does that mean I spent an hour of my time not learning? And that's even in the Gemara havamina. Kal v'chaymer havaminas I have in my svara that turn out to be wrong. They're for sure that I just waste an hour. And the answer is, Limud Torah is the hishtadlus to understand Torah. So every step you take in that hishtadlus is a kiyum of Talmud Torah, even if everything you did was wrong. In other words, you're not just credited for the emes you learn. You're credited for the hishtadlus to understand the emes. Right? So all of those in Yanim. Because it's a machlekes l'shem shemayim. Now, I have a kasha on that. There's a famous word from Rav Chaim. Okay, it's more of a joke, but it's brought down in the Shulchan Aruch that although the chatchila suda shlisha should be with bread, but the evet, there's mazonos, peiros. There's even a shita that says you're makayim suda shlishas b'divrei Torah. So they tell a Maisa that Rav Chaim was learning with his talmidim, and it was time for suda shlishas. So he said, we got to stop. We got to have shalosh shudas. Someone said, Rebbe, why can't we be soymech on the Mandi Omar, Das Yochid, that you're Yaitse b'Talmud Torah? So says Rav Chaim, I'll tell you the problem. So I'll tell you over a Chiddush, and we think we're Yaitse Shalosh Shudas, and then Motzei Shabbos, I see the Chiddush is wrong. It gets slugged up. So l'mafreya, it wasn't Divrei Torah. If it's l'mafreya, it wasn't Divrei Torah. We're not Yaitse Suda Shalishis. But he said, my Rebbitzon's gefilte fish is irrefutable. There's no upslug for her gefilte fish. So I know for sure I'm Yaitse Suda Shalishis. Now, the truth of the matter is, that Maisa, it's a cute Maisa, but that Maisa is very problematical because that Maisa is actually saying, if I say a Svara that gets slugged up, L'mafreya, I wasn't Yaitse Talmud Torah. The emes is that's not true. That absolutely is not true. If that would be true, then unfortunately that might mean a large part of our day, not just our day, maybe even Gedolei Olam's days. It might be they didn't learn because they were coming up with havaminas and svaras that the Chazon Ish will go through many things. So what's the pshat? He wasted 10 hours? Of course not. This was his devekas and terror. So the Maisa is not, I don't think is meant to be taken 100% seriously. Rav Chaim said it as a chap. If he said it, I don't even know, if he said it. But it's a davar pasha that you are Yaitse Talmud Torah with mistaken havaminas and the like, because it's the hishtadlus to be mavakesh emes, and that's the meaning of machlekes l'shem shemayim, sefer liskayim, that we continue to learn even the shitas that we do not pass like. But b'derech drush, the Welt says a different pshat, and it's vadei drush. Machlekes l'shem shemayim, sofo liskayim, is seen as a negative rather than a positive, and that is, when you think you're l'shem shemayim, that machlekes never ends. Meaning it's a negative thing, that I'm l'shem shemayim, right? Even though I'm not really, but a person sometimes convinces himself, and that's a sakana. In fact, it's very difficult. When I'm arguing not l'shem shemayim, and I know it's not l'shem shemayim, so somebody can give me musar, somebody could convince me. But when I've convinced myself I'm a real l'shem shemayimnik, it's very hard to end that machlekes because each person thinks that they're 100% right. Rav Yaakov Kamenetsky used to say, sometimes people would come to him, and they would say, I'm very upset about what somebody did to me, but it's not because it's a personal thing. It's the principle, it's the avla, it's the ivus, it's a matter of tzedek. That's what's upsetting me. So Rav Yaakov said to him, you're not the first person that has suffered this. Many, many people have suffered this. Why did you never get upset before when other people were suffering? If you're telling me it's the abstract idea that this is not righteous behavior, you should have been angry when the other guy was being cheated. Why are you so upset when you're being cheated? Because it is personal. It's because of you. It's not because of the principle. So, b'derech klal, when people say, I'm not angry because of me, I'm angry because of the principle, it cannot always, it's because of me. I'm angry because of me. Baruch Hashem, I have a principle I can use as an argument on my side, but it's not the principle. It's not the Yashris B'yetzim. Right? Now, a real tzaddik, indeed, would feel as bad if it happened to somebody else as if it happened to him, and maybe more so. But for most of us, we have more of a regesh when it happens to us than if it happens to somebody else. So that's a siman mufak, actually, that it's not because of the abstract principle of justice. All right, so these are the 5 categories of Erev Rav. So again, the Gra says that this existence is ma'akev the Geula, although I said, I'm going to have to look at the Mekayris here. It's not clear from the Lashon if he's going only on the last one, the Balei Machlekes that are called Amalekim, or he's going on all 5 categories. Right? The Lashon is not clear what he's going on. And in the Even Shelaima, you can't really be so medayik in the Lashon because this is not the exact words of the Gra. So you have to look at the Mekayris and how the Gra said it, and when he said it, or the Zayar. So if you have, you can check it yourself. I'll try to check it as well, and we'll continue with this. Okay? All be well and have a good Chaydish, good